You sit in a room much like the one you had interpreted in every day for the past few days. You assume that they all probably looked more or less the same. The First Order surely couldn't be bothered with aesthetics. Meeting rooms were meeting rooms. They were there to serve a purpose, and you highly doubted that the First Order was concerned with impressing anyone in a diplomatic sense. No, they had their soldiers and guns and advanced weaponry. If they wanted to impress anyone, they had muscle for that. Meeting rooms were probably of little to no importance to them. You're there quite a while, simply waiting, and you wonder if the stormtrooper who was assigned to you got lost or simply decided it wasn't a meeting worth showing up for. B did say that this meeting was of little consequence, and so it made sense that the stormtrooper would be running late. He probably decided to sleep in, or have a late breakfast, or chat with some people before he or she came in. You think it over. It made sense. Of course, on the other hand, it could also mean that they were taking a longer time reviewing your records before they came in so they could better discern if you were lying. The thought scares you, but you immediately know that it is highly unlikely. They could simply bring your records with them if they wanted to fact-check you. No memorization required. Especially if these meetings were of no consequence, memorizing silly facts about a silly girl would be a gigantic waste of time. You are sitting facing the wall, the door off to your right. It suddenly slides open and you expect to see a flash of white. Instead, you see a flash of black, and you know who it is before your eyes meet the black slit in that familiar mask. Immediately, your heart jumps into your chest. Don't say his name. Don't even think it. That was what Tara warned you yesterday. And now Kylo Ren was going to probe your mind to make you spill all of your secrets, even the ones you had no idea that you had. He sits down in the chair across from you, and you let out a heavy breath through your nostrils. You shrink a little under his intense gaze, forcing yourself to look at the mask, but avoid staring directly into the eye slit. What kind of monster was under there? Did he have tentacles? 8 eyes? Wondering what he looked like was hardly the point, but if he was trying to probe your mind, it would probably be best to keep your thoughts distracted. Wouldn't it? Name? He asks. You give it. Age? 26. Home planet? You decide for a moment and then state the name of the planet where you went to school. If he can read minds, he'll know you're lying. If he's a good read of character, however, he might know you're lying anyway. It was tough to tell. He pauses for a moment, settling back in his chair. Do I frighten you? Your eyes shoot up to the slit and then look away. What was under there? No. You do what you can to make yourself look tall. You're not a very good liar. Shit. I just don't think it's fair that you can conceal yourself behind a mask while quizzing me about my true intentions, you say firmly. Yes, you had been warned many times to be aware of Kylo Ren and his temper, but maybe he wouldn't lash out at you if you were honest. You could only hope. He cocks his head to one side. Would you like me to take it off? You hesitate, but try not to let it show. Do you really want to know what's under there? That's up to you. It makes no difference to me who you are. And who are you? He asks, making no move to take off the mask. Or who are you pretending to be? I'm an interpreter, you tell him, a linguist. I study languages and I help aid in the clear and concise trade of information between two parties. And how many languages do you know? He asks. That stupid flat tone of voice through the helmet is starting to get on your nerves, but you try not to let it show. Verbal or nonverbal? You ask. He just stares you down through the unblinking slit and doesn't answer. Honestly, you knew so many you could hardly keep track. You knew when someone else was talking or signing whether or not it was a language you knew, or could at least figure out. With so many languages abound, there was always some occasional overlap. You decide to pull out a number and hope it sounds confident enough. 47, fluently. He crosses his arms over his chest, almost as if he doesn't believe you. And how exactly would it benefit you to know so many languages? It just interests me, you say quietly, but there is an edge to your voice. People interest me. Cultures interest me. It's just interesting. And how did you get to be fluent in all of these languages? He asks. Considering the primary language of that planet is basic, I can't imagine that you would have much experience with other languages there. Your eyes widen ever so slightly, but you try not to let it show. Rigorous study, you tell him, and we do have a trading post. All sorts of people do come around, now and again, as a good way to pick up your new languages and assess your skills. A small one, he says, as if he's familiar with it. You can't imagine that he would be. But it's not a major trading hub. Anyone savvy enough to venture there would know at least enough basic to secure a trade. You stare him down. If anything, knowing so many languages could only prove beneficial for survival. Learning the language and customs of another planet can make it easy to disappear from one place and blend in someplace else. There is peace there, you say firmly as possible. There would be no reason for me to run away. My dedication to my craft is hardly indicative of, "Tell me the truth!" His fist slams on the table and you flinch involuntarily. You stare him down. He's asking you for information, and for all you know, if you don't tell him, he probably has very painful means of taking it. Fine, you say, giving him the name of a planet with a much larger trading hub, notorious for back-alley trades and shady dealings. I was born there. My mother died when I was very young. My father would always take me with him wherever he went, and so I had the opportunity to meet many people and learn a great many languages early on. My father was fond of drink and ebla, and he had quite a temper. One day he didn't have enough money, and so when I was not yet 12, he sold me to an eclectic trading crew that dabbled in a little bit of everything, mostly human cargo. One day, I found my language skills proved useful when I overheard that they were about to be double-crossed in a trade. They kept me on their ship as an interpreter, and there I remained for years until we landed on the planet that housed my academia. The trading crew had stumbled upon a rare book that the school wanted, and while I was negotiating the deal, the man brokering the trade was impressed with my knowledge and quizzed me in over a dozen languages. He told me he was looking for a language tutor for his daughter, Sadie, to give her more worldly experience. I agreed only under the condition that I would not be a slave and that I could enroll in school with her. He was a very kind man and incredibly wealthy. He paid a high price for both me and the book, and I have stayed close to his family ever since. He stares you down, but you stare right back. That was it. That was the truth. You had nothing to hide. There was no reason for him to go into your head now, and you suspect he knew that. If he did, the only thing he would find there were memories that you didn't care to dwell upon. As far as you were concerned, your life began when you enrolled in school and started tutoring Sadie. Both she and her family had treated you had never treated you as anything other than a friend, and you were grateful for an environment where your language skills could be used in a positive way. The only other person there that could confirm the story was B. He had immediately picked up on your advanced language skills in class, and you had reluctantly confided in him the truth of your origins. He had then taken on somewhat of a mentor role towards you, and although you didn't particularly feel the need for one, his friendliness towards you was appreciated. Plus, he also gave you work, and work gave you money, which was always a nice incentive. Sadie's father always offered, but you could never take anything from him. He had bought your freedom and gave your future a sense of safety and certainty. That in itself was something you would never be able to repay. Is that the truth? He asks. He had been sitting in the chair, arms crossed over his chest, almost slouching as he listened to your story. Now he sat up and put his elbows on the table as he leaned forward. Yes, you reply, a little uncertainly. Of course it had been the truth. Did he really expect you to rehearse such an unsavory story? Sadie can confirm it, although her father never did want me to tell her how he had acquired me. He wanted her to have the experience of languages and cultures without their direct interaction, should she ever need it. He knows how life in the galaxy can be. He is silent for a long while as you just sit there and wait. His glare is not nearly as ominous or oppressive as it was when he had first walked in, but it could simply have been because you were getting used to it. His expression behind the mask, however, was as unreadable as ever. Do you miss your father? He asks, and the question takes you aback. You honestly chose not to think about your father as often as possible. Not that that was difficult to do. He was part of a life that you no longer wished to recognize as your own. No, you reply curtly. Do you hate him? What? My father is most likely dead, you reply. It never does well to dwell upon grudges that we have no chance of remedying. Do you think he was an honorable man? Seriously, what are these questions? You ask yourself. What could he possibly hope to gain by asking me this? You shake your head. The man sold his daughter for drink. I would not say he was. Would you say that you are an honorable person? He asks. You can tell by the way he leans forward that he's waiting for your answer. Was that his real question all along? You hesitate before you give it. I am neither honorable nor dishonorable, you tell him. I am an interpreter. I do not make decisions. I interpret words. I carry messages, but I am not responsible for who says or does what with the information I provide, as long as that message does not stray from the initial utterance. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. It's not my decision. The consequences of someone else's words do not rest on my conscience. He seems to consider this for a moment. Your reasoning is either very smart or incredibly stupid, he says. He gets up suddenly, so fast he almost knocks the chair over as he turns and strides out of the room. You stare after him for a moment, not quite sure what to do or say, but as the door slides shut behind him, you realize there's not much you can do with either. He's gone. You let out a deep breath that you didn't realize you were holding and bury your face in your hands. That had been very, very intense, and you couldn't believe you had told him as much as you had. Had he compelled the truth from you? You shake your head, as if to confirm this to yourself. No, it didn't feel like he had used any sort of mind tricks on you, aside from the typical intimidation tactics that you could plainly see. You stand up slowly and make your way towards the door. You carefully peep out into the hallway, but he's already gone. Slowly, you make your way down to the cafeteria where Sadie, Ladson, and Shane are already eating. You grab food as quickly as you can and sit down to join them. You were in there a while, Shane says. It's probably not smart to talk about this in front of other stormtroopers, but you can't hold yourself back right now. Who did you get for your interview, you ask? Just someone in a white helmet, Sadie says, and the rest of them nod their heads. Why? Who did you get? Just someone in a white helmet, you say nonchalantly. I know our times were staggered. I wasn't sure if it was one person doing all of our interviews or what. I don't know, Ladson shrugs. We were all in and out within 10 minutes. What took you so long? What were you telling them? You hesitate for a moment, trying to think up a good excuse. My guy got there really, really late, you say. It's not all that far from the truth. I was waiting a really long time before the guy came in. Then he asked me a few questions and then left really suddenly. It was all kind of weird. Yeah, well, it can't be any worse than what we'll have to do later, Shane sighs. Interpreting for the Tortudero and General Hux, I'm surprised Bean C didn't just take this one. They could use a day off, Ladson says, and besides, our skills are more than good enough for the task at hand. Precisely, Sadie says. It never dawned on you before just how annoying it was to listen to her agree with everything Ladson says. She must have caught the look on your face as she picks up her hands and asks you if something's wrong. You raise your hands to gesture that you're fine and continue eating your food. First the ominous stare, and now Kylo Ren was singling you out to learn your history firsthand. Why was he singling you out, specifically? What could be the reason for it? You didn't know anything. Sadie's partner is nice enough, but he likes to pepper his signs with a lot of wordplay and jokes and off-the-cuff remarks. Sadie is quick to laugh at his jokes, but you struggle to keep up and are silently thankful that Taro is taciturn by comparison. Most of his humor and jokes go straight over your head, unfortunately. You always struggle to understand jokes in other languages, but this was hardly a surprise, considering you struggled to understand jokes in Basic. Sometimes the humor in a joke lied in the way he signed something, the way he would invert his wrist slightly to mispronounce a sign intentionally. Sadie would laugh as if she understood, but whatever was funny about it lay past your point of comprehension. Still, you took your cues from her, and you knew enough to smile so that it touched your eyes and laugh along. You had no idea if Sadie understood the jokes or if she was just better at interpreting the right cues for when to laugh, but either way, you let her interpret this meeting. There was a table in the center of the room so that each party could sit on either side, and one chair was pulled up to the side of the table for the interpreter. There were a row of chairs along the wall to the right, behind where Sadie was sitting, and so you took one close to her, so you would almost be right behind her in case she needed you. You knew she wouldn't, but the backup was appreciated anyway, especially in terms of emotional support. You had no idea what to expect of General Hux. Fortunately for you, he was extremely cordial. "Ladies," he says as he walks into the room. You both stand, although her tortudo did not. You didn't know his name, he just distinguished himself by a letter on his shoulder. "I'm General Hux, commander of the Starkiller Base." "It's so nice to meet you," Sadie says, and she sounds as if she's almost gushing. If B was really looking for someone to play the role of the innocent, nervous girl, he should have picked Sadie. She was practically bred for it. You were far too cynical to be anything but. "I don't think I've had the pleasure," he says, bowing slightly as he takes her hand and raises it to his lips. She giggles, and it's everything you can do not to vomit in your mouth. The whole scene looks way too forced. You knew it, and you were sure Sadie knew it too, but it was almost mandatory that you play along. "I'm Sadie," she replies. She gestures towards you. "And I believe you've already met?" General Hux says your name, and you try not to act too surprised. You had given your name to Kylo Ren, but General Hux was quite a distance away, and you were sure that he hadn't heard you, which could only mean that your name had come up in conversation. It was probably only in passing, but after Kylo Ren's visit earlier, you couldn't help but wonder. "You're good with names," Sadie says as she sits down. He takes a seat down in his designated chair, and you are silently thankful that he didn't come over and kiss your hand as well as you take a seat of your own. He simply smiles good-naturedly at her as he starts the meeting. It's interesting to see Sadie interpret. During class assignments, your feedback more often than not was that you always seemed emotionless, like a drone, constantly processing and churning away. That's what it felt like to you, so it wasn't really that bizarre to imagine that that's what it looked like on the outside as well. Sadie, however, was a whole different story. She made interpreting look almost effortless. Her eyes shined and she smiled while she was working. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but it looked like she was genuinely interested in what other people had to say and sought to carry on that interest to the third party. Even when you could tell she was concentrating, she would bite her lip in a way that could only be described as endearing. It didn't help that she was ridiculously beautiful. You would describe your own looks as as best, but Sadie had long dark hair that she constantly wore in a single braid down her back. Her skin was darker than yours, and she had big brown eyes that stood in stark contrast to your own lackluster features. General Hux noticed it too. You could tell by the way he would sneak glances at her whenever she had turned to face the torturer. You weren't disgusted with him for looking. She attracted a lot of attention from both girls and boys alike, and she knew how to use it, but it still felt inappropriate. You still felt protective of her, and every time he glanced at her and did that cocky little half-smile of his, it made your stomach churn. The meeting didn't take very long at all. He had simply asked about the tortutor's history, which was not an expensive affair by any means, considering he had never really traveled outside his home planet aside from a few minor occasions. As he gets up to leave the room, Tower comes in, and Sadie and you switch seats. General Hux forces a tight smile in your direction, and you quickly force yourself to return it before he glances away. You can immediately tell he liked Sadie better, but that didn't bother you in the slightest. "Truth be told, I don't really like you much either, pal," you say in your head. You turn to Taro and nod at him confidently, assuring both him and yourself that you are not intimidated by General Hux in any way. "Now then," General Hux starts, but he's interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in." There is a pause as it opens, and Captain Phasma walks in, dressed in her signature silver armor. You smile up at her, politely, but she does not seem to take any notice of you. "Sir, your presence is requested. I'm told it's important." "It always is," General Hux replies sarcastically. He looks at you, then forces another smile at Sadie before he gets up and leaves the room. "I'll return shortly." Tara looks at Sadie and makes the sign for what. Sadie blinks at him in confusion, and you burst out laughing. You snap your 2 fingers against your palm with both hands so loudly that there is a resounding smack as you hold your hands up in her direction. Ha! What? Sadie asks out loud, repeating the sign on her hands. Taro taps under his eye, and you spin around to face her, hanging loosely over the side of the chair to look at her. The way he was looking at you, you murmur. Oh, she sighs. That. She brushes her bangs out of her face. He's kind of creepy. She realizes that she had stopped signing and points to the door where General Hux had just left and makes a face sticking out her tongue. Taro taps his first 2 fingers repeatedly against his palm, lightly echoing the motion you had recently made to show silent, gentle laughter. He turns towards you and makes the sign for interview, followed by the sign for good. He tilts his head to the side to indicate a question. You hesitate. You want to tell him about Kylo Ren, but you don't know if that would be appropriate. You don't really want to talk to B about it, as you're concerned what he will say if he knew you had accidentally attracted negative attention to yourself, but at the same time, Taro was more or less your client. It wouldn't really be appropriate to talk to him either. Telling any others seemed like an unnecessary risk to take, and you didn't want to get them caught up in it, especially not Sadie. So was there no one on this base that you could actually talk to? Somehow that seemed like an even worse position to be in. Apparently you had somehow captured the special attention of the most dangerous, powerful man on this base, and you were completely and utterly alone. Taro seems to sense something in your hesitance, but he doesn't have time to question you further. The door slides open, and to your absolute horror, Kylo Ren walks in. The air in the room immediately changes. Behind you, you can almost hear Sadie making herself smaller as Taro sits up a bit straighter, eyeing Kylo Ren with weary concern. You immediately spin around in your chair and sneak a look at Taro out of the corner of your eye, silently waiting to take any direction from him. Kylo Ren's gaze sweeps the room for a minute before he sits down in the chair that General Hux had previously occupied. He doesn't look at you at all, and for once you're grateful for that. Taro turns towards you so suddenly that you can almost hear his neck snap as he tells you to sit in the chair next to Sadie. You immediately climb out of your chair and follow his instructions as fast as possible, resisting the urge to grab Sadie's arm for support. Neither of them look at you. Instead, they seem to have locked gazes and were communicating purely by thought. The air in the room felt charged with electricity, and you couldn't tell if it was because the Force was at play, or if it was because you were watching the mental energy of 2 powerful entities clash against one another. They both seemed to be intensely focused, especially Kylo Ren. His hands were gripping the side of the chair tightly with each gloved hand, whereas Taro's posture suggested a stern, yet calmer authority. Your attention is tugged away from them by Sadie, who glances at Kylo Ren with her eyes and then makes a sign for scary. You shake your head and lower your hands to make your gestures as hard to see as possible so as not to call any attention to yourself. You shake your head and spell out the word for mask, and then make the sign for coward. She glances back at them and then back to you, making a face of confusion as she taps the side of her head twice with one finger. You just shrug, keeping your shoulders as close to your body as possible. You don't have the faintest idea what they're talking about. You highly doubt Kylo Ren speaks Tortudaroon, and so you could only imagine that they were trying to communicate in its rawest form, with mental pictures, with emotion, with pure energy. It was nerve-wracking. You didn't need to see his face through the mask. The body posture alone suggested frustration. Whatever Kylo Ren wanted, Taro wasn't giving it to him, or at least not easily. Over time, Taro's pose looks weaker as he leans back in his chair, and you can't tell whether he is struggling to maintain his mental energy or if he is in actual pain. Kylo Ren is sitting so far forward on the chair now that he almost may not have been really seated at all, his hands by his sides with his palms open as if he was channeling. Suddenly, Taro turns and signs something to you. It's a short phrase, a simple one, but you blink and make the sign for again. In truth, you were so caught up and focused on trying to see the mental energy expended between them as a tangible, physical thing that you had totally missed what he had signed. He signs it again, but you still don't understand as you thrust your outstretched fingers into the palm of your opposite hand. Again. He signs it again, patiently, just a few simple signs, but for some reason it's not working its way into your brain as a coherent thought. What's he saying? Kylo Ren demands. You glance at him for a brief moment and look back to Taro, who repeats the phrase. You stammer. You can feel Kylo Ren growing impatient, but you don't understand what Taro is trying to say. You just don't. The words are simple enough. You turn to Sadie in a panic, your eyes wide and desperate. Help me! What is he saying? Sadie sits forward a bit in her chair and gestures with her hand for Taro to sign it again. He does so, and she bites her lip before looking at you and then back to Kylo Ren. I think I have it right, she whispers as she looks at you nervously. What? Kylo Ren demands. He gets to his feet and you immediately thrust your arm out in front of Sadie in a reflexive, defensive gesture, ready to throw yourself between them if he were to approach. She glances at him nervously, then back at you. But she's looking at you, really looking, as if seeing you for the first time. He says you're force sensitive, she tells you quietly. You blink at her. Kylo Ren storms out of the room.